early on in our dating relationship, you know this if you've been following us for a while, we started kissing for 5-6 months, and then we decided to not do it for the rest of our dating relationship. And those first 5 to 6 months, you couldn't tell me, boy, that our sex life wasn't about to be on and popping. Hey, so I just really, like, in my spirit was like, yo,
your spirit,
like, yo, this joint about to be crazy.
And that's so funny. Quick pause, because people talk about, oh, how do you know? This is one of the questions somebody asked last week when we did your guys' Q&A on sex, married sex, was how do you know that you're going to be sexually compatible, or there's going to be chemistry if you don't test drive the car? And this just goes to show, just because the state of how you are when you are dating before you're married is not always translating to after you walk down the aisle or after you get married.
What's up, fam? Welcome back to our channel. My name is Tim. This is my beautiful wife, Pauline, and you're tuning in to another episode of the W Podcast, where you get wisdom in the word with the
Wheelers.
Hey, so we told y'all part 2 is this week. If you didn't see it already, pause this video, go back and watch last week's video where we talked about the truth of sex in a Christian marriage, and it got spicy. I know that a lot of people have already watched it for our standards as far as our channel.
Y'all loved that topic.
And we said several times throughout that video that we would share more about our personal story, because I don't know how you feel, but I feel like sex is very taboo in the Christian church, talking about it, especially when it comes to couples and their experiences.
Yes.
Some of that may be for good reasons, like you don't want to say, some of it is sacred, personal. Personal. But then at the same time, there's this piece where I wouldn't be shocked if some people may be ashamed or don't really want to talk about what they got going on because they don't want everybody to know. And we just want to be a safe place here on our podcast where we can give you some truth, give you some insight, and then hopefully set you up for success as you step into.
Right, because the truth of the matter is culture and the enemy is very loud about sex, and it's not something we believe that God wants us as Christians, as the body of Christ, to be quiet about. Of course, there is honor in such a sacred, vulnerable space within a marriage, but so many of us go into marriage, myself included, with having unhealthy mindsets towards sex. So we figured, like, hey, if we struggled with this as a couple who honored God throughout our dating relationship, how much more, anybody else can relate to it as well. So we want to be kind of that. We're hoping that this will spark a conversation for you within your relationship, if you're in one, or just between you and the Lord, so that you can be best prepared for marriage when your time comes, and that you can enjoy all that God has for you in your marriage.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to walk you through a journey today. Our personal journey, but we're hoping that you can see yourself in it, or start to, after this video, take time with the Lord and be like, hey, they said something that actually struck with me, like, help me with this. And one of the things we want to start with is what our own personal experiences were with sex outside of meeting each other. So when we were growing up, like, did we hear about sex in church at all?
Yeah.
Or was it just music videos? Like, for you, what was your experience of learning about sex?
Because we did grow up with music videos, what is it? Generation Z? Is that the one after us?
Gen Z.
I feel
Gen Z, yeah.
Gen Z. They don't really have that as much as we did. But it's also, we didn't have streaming and YouTube and all that stuff on TVs. So, sorry, what was the question? Also, y'all, we're matching today, if anyone noticed. I got dressed first.
Wow. Why are you so... I'm wearing a red hat and you're wearing a red shirt. It's not matching.
It's red and black. Red and black.
Anyway.
He doesn't like what we match.
Yeah. No, I don't care about that, but that was just... Anyway.
They're thinking it. Somebody's thinking it. So I just wanted to...
Let's stay on track.
Okay.
So what was your experience with sex growing up? Like, was it? Did you have a conversation, birds and the bees, with your parents?
Birds and the
Was
bees.
it talked about at your church?
Why is it even called birds and bees?
I don't know.
Yeah, so I had a lot of experiences, just like everybody else. With like exposure, I guess I should say exposure to it, because I very much lived in the world. I did not grow up in like a sheltered home, and I don't say that in a bad way, because sometimes my mom just watches podcasts. Hi, Mom. I don't mean it in a bad way. We were exposed to a lot of things, and like some things my parents probably knew about, some things they didn't and don't. But I think overall, I did not. The way that I would, I guess, describe my understanding of sex was like, I knew that it was something that I wasn't supposed to do and I wasn't supposed to like know about, but that obviously increased my appetite for it and like wanting to be curious about it. And I think that that's like normal and natural to be curious about sex when you're not married or even when you're married, whatever. But I did not, I had no understanding of like, is the word sanctity, like sacredness? If both of those apply, I don't know. I had no understanding of like sacredness towards sex, and understanding like this is something that's really good for married couples. And when you're married, you're gonna really love this. It's gonna be so great. And that's something that I hope to pass on to our boys and our children, is that not that it's something that is dirty and that should be hidden and is secretive. And I think that's like what the enemy does a pretty good job of, is like exposing us to it and then like kind of putting it in the dark. And I don't think sex is supposed to be something that's in the dark. It's supposed to be something that's private, yes, absolutely, within a marriage, but it's not supposed to be something that's celebrated. And most of the time my exposure to it was like, it was something that I was curious about, as I said, but they did. I remember my dad like tried to talk to me about it once, and it was super awkward. I don't remember anything that he said. I remember like him calling me into his room, and like I thought I was gonna get in trouble, and I was like very scared. I can't remember how old I was, maybe like middle school. And he kind of felt like, okay, I have to talk to you about this. And I was like, Dad, like they already talked to us about this at school, and because we had sex ed at that time, they didn't call it that. It was like health education or something like that. And it wasn't just sex. It wasn't even really sex. It was mostly like body. Yeah, reproductive organs and like the menstrual cycle and all of those things, which I already got my period by then, so they were very late with that. But yeah, so I already told him, like, I already had this talk at school, like I really like don't want to have this talk with you. And I think like looking back, it probably wasn't a conversation that my dad should have had with me. Like maybe my mom should have had it. I don't know. Mom, I'm sorry if like that sounds weird, but like I think maybe I already was very uncomfortable talking to him about that or listening to him about that. And then like he just stopped the conversation. And as far as church, I do remember one time we had this retreat. Maybe I was like early high school, late middle school. And it was like an overnight retreat that they had with these other churches that had come from the area. And they wanted to talk to us about purity. And I think it was like, I remember like a chastity belt being brought up and like that whole like medieval type of situation. Not that they were telling us to wear those, but it was very much like I think the goal was they wanted us to promise to keep ourselves for marriage. But I remember a lot of the kids in that room were kind of already like,
too late, cuz. Yeah,
they were very much past. And that's something that's very humbled me as a parent, like realizing you have to talk to your kids about sex like way earlier than you think. If you're like doing well, you're going to be the first person to talk to them about it, and it's not you're like following up from what they hear from like the schoolyard or like from TV or whatever. So yeah, so that was what I remember from church as far as church goes. But there was no moment of like, oh, I am so excited for this. It just was something like, yeah, I already have my kind of views on this, and like it looks like it's something that's very beneficial for women as far as like gaining power and authority and the media, and like women are these sex symbols, and like if I can be thin and this and that like them, then I could maybe have like some type of like power or authority. That was like a very subtle thought looking back. I don't think at the time consciously I thought that.
Right.
But yeah, that was my kind of very convoluted experience, very muddied, obviously.
So it was never super clear to you that, oh, God doesn't want me to have sex because he created it for marriage, right? Because that's the best place for me to have it. And honestly, to some degree, that can be a lot for a kid to maybe be able to really understand. Right, because marriage seems
so far away. And I think that it is, I think when you grow up seeing images and hear stories of them, people the majority of the people having sex are not married, you think that that's normal. So like in movies and stuff, a lot of, rom-coms back then, and I'm sure today too, like there's some type of sex scene with a couple who just met 15 seconds ago and now they're in love because they had this hot steamy sex, and that's what it means to be in love, is to have that encounter.
And this is a side note, not related to this episode, but I think it's good to say, if everything you watch, everything you listen to, everything you read normalizes sin, be very careful, because you're going to end up normalizing sin and saying, well, it's just this, or it's just that, or it's not that big of a deal, instead of reading God's word more than you read anything else or look at anything else, and being around other people who are trying to be like-minded, because it's very easy for the world to pull you in to what they want to do. We have to remember, the Bible says that it's a narrow road. It's not a road that everybody is going to travel on, but it is the way, the truth, and the life. And I think it's really important just to be mindful of that, just to do a self-evaluation. Like, am I setting myself up for success, to make sure I'm not putting myself in situations that could tempt me?
Right.
So that's for free.
It's very similar to like if you grow up seeing your family and people that you love and watching movies with violence and like breaking the law. That's very normal to you. That's what you grow up to do, or you grow up at least to tolerate and understanding like, oh, okay, it's not a big deal. My cousins did this, my dad was this and that, versus if that's extremely foreign to you, it's going to be kind of shocking. Like, oh, I can't believe people do that. And you should have those reactions to things that are illegal, or in this case, things that are against, God's word. And I think, the other part of it too is like, not only for me did I grow up seeing images and media of people mostly having sex who were not married, but I didn't really hear any married couples talk about sex. And I know that this is kind of like what we're gonna be facing with as parents, of like, how do you expose your kids to sex in a healthy way? And no, I don't mean exposing them for them to visually see it, but to know at the right age in the right way, like, this is something that is good. So like, if you don't, like, my parents were not terribly affectionate, and not that affection and kissing and hugging means sex, because obviously it doesn't, but I think that there's something to kind of be said there.
Well, can we be honest? The enemy knows what he's doing, and it's not as sexy to hear a married couple talk about sex, and honestly, it can be more exciting to hear, if we're just talking about our flesh, it can be more exciting to hear about sex outside of marriage. No. I
don't know that song.
Yes, you do. No. Neighbors Know My Name. You know that song.
God.
It's not as good to hear I Bet My Children Know My Name. Like, that don't hit. That's kind of weird. Like, if we're just being honest, y'all, like, you don't want to hear a song about your kids knowing your name. You want to hear about neighbors. Like, that just feels better to our flesh. And that's because the flesh is evil and it doesn't want anything to do with godliness. And I say that to say, be mindful that just because something sounds good or feels good to you, you don't want to start thinking that actually is like the way that you should go. A lot of us grew up similar to you, where we were hearing songs, seeing videos, hearing our friends talk about sex outside of marriage. Some people lying, saying they were having sex and they really weren't. Some people really was out here in these streets. And honestly, in my middle school, growing up, you learn how to lust way better than you learn how to do calculus. Like, you learned how to not honor the Lord with your eyes and your body. And it was something that you strive for. And unfortunately, I was introduced to porn in school. And if some of y'all remember what the PSP was, boy had it on his PSP in the locker room. Like, it's just crazy how, if you're not intentional as a parent, and sometimes, like, there's nothing my parents could have done in that situation, right? Like, they didn't know that kid was going to bring it. But having those conversations frequently, as awkward as they may be, maybe can help a kid who is seeing stuff that maybe you don't know he's seeing.
Right.
And then being able to talk about, all right, this is what it means. Because that's one thing I feel like. I feel like sex was talked about to some degree growing up, and this may not be my parents' fault, because, the Bible talks about how Satan blinds us if we're in the world from being able to see the truth. So maybe it was communicated clearly to me and I just wasn't able to see it because I wasn't trying to live for the Lord. But I knew sex was wrong. I don't feel like I really understood why it was wrong. And I feel like that's where the disconnect was for me growing up.
Yeah.
Was, all right, you say it's wrong. Y'all say a lot of stuff is wrong. Talking about parents. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm trying to be out here doing it.
Right. Like what does it have to do with me?
Because everything I hear, everything I see says it's good. Yeah. So y'all say it's wrong, but then you also say it's good in marriage. So it's confusing.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
And ultimately, I just want to do what I want. So I think it's just tough.
And it is to your point, like, even there are parents or adults who tell teenagers, children, like, oh, you shouldn't have sex because you don't want to have, like, get an STD or you don't want to get pregnant. And then, you know, smart kids or just normal kids nowadays know, like, well, there's ways to prevent that. I can get what I want and protect myself at the same time. And so it's very hard because it's kind of like that scare tactic mentality of like, oh, you shouldn't do this because don't look down, you're gonna fall off a cliff. Don't have sex because you're gonna get pregnant, you're gonna get an STD or whatever. And obviously kids are very naive. They're very, like have the mindset of being invincible. Like, oh, nothing bad's gonna happen to me because they're ignorant, because they're young, they're mature. So it's kind of finding that way of not just telling them what bad things could happen to them, but what good things could happen if they wait, and like that benefit of being there. But then also it's hard because, you know, how getting somebody whose brain is not fully developed yet and their heart is not surrendered to the Lord, they don't love the Lord the way that they should or will. And a lot of that obviously kind of falls back on, like, you know, examples and community and all of those things. Like, do you look up to somebody who is waiting, who did wait, like all of those things? But it's more of, you know, that delayed gratification is very hard when you are a teenager. Like, you live for the next week, for the next day, for the next couple of hours, you know, looking forward to, like, oh yeah, when I get married. Especially when you tell a 15-year-old, like, oh, when you get married when you're 25 or 30, like, that's twice their lifetime. So waiting, it's kind of hard, I think. And I don't know the answer is, like, how do you do that?
Yeah, we don't know the answer to that, so all the seasoned saints, y'all put it in the chat. How you teach your kids. But let's move on, because I think there's still so much to say about our journey with sex, and we really want to give some practical insight to people who may be struggling. It's like, does anybody that's Christian ever struggle with sex, or does anybody that's Christian ever have good sex? And we want to kind of break that down.
Because,
Now, let's go into our dating phase, because we just talked about kind of what our thought processes were with sex coming up and growing up. And mind you, we've said this before on the podcast, and we have whole episodes around it, but both of us came into our Christian dating relationship having had sex outside of marriage with other people. So we did not come into our dating experience with pure eyes, fresh eyes, virgin eyes, probably the best word
we were pure in
to
the
say.
Lord.
Yeah, virgin eyes was the best way to put that. So that being said, we come into our relationship, and y'all know that early on in our dating relationship, you know this if you've been following us for a while, we started kissing for 5-6 months, and then we decided to not do it for the rest of our dating relationship. And those first 5 to 6 months, you couldn't tell me, boy, that our sex life wasn't about to be on and popping. Hey, so I just really, like, in my spirit was like, yo,
your spirit,
like, yo, this joint about to be crazy.
And that's so funny. Quick pause, because people talk about, oh, how do you know? This is one of the questions somebody asked last week when we did your guys' Q&A on sex, married sex, was how do you know that you're going to be sexually compatible, or there's going to be chemistry if you don't test drive the car? And this just goes to show, just because the state of how you are when you are dating before you're married is not always translating to after you walk down the aisle or after you get married. There is a spiritual exchange, and we've heard of couples where they did sleep together while they were dating, and then they got engaged, got married, and they, like, the sex was good when they were not married, and then they get married and things change. Yeah. There's no, and I know that some people don't want to hear that, because you want to know, you want the certainty. You don't want to trust God with your sex life. You want to test it out. You want to see for yourself and make a decision based on your 5 senses.
Run that back. No, that was, don't rush that. That was good. Say that again.
Some of you don't want to trust God with your sex life. You want to test it out. You want to see what it's going to be like, and you want to experience it with your own five senses, so that you can know, hey, I saw what I need to see, I heard what I need to hear, and I'm ready to, this is what I want, and this is the decision I'm going to make. But that's not living by faith. Living by faith is, God, I'm going to do what you tell me to do, whether I understand it or not, and I know, God, that you are going to have your promises and what's good for me on the other side of my obedience. So testing it out, even if it's good right now and you guys are not married, doesn't mean it's going to be good when you guys are married. And there are statistics that share couples that live together and have sex before they get married are more likely to get divorced. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Sex is not good if y'all not together no more than 20 years.
So to be clear, we did not have sex when we were dating, but the way we were kissing, it felt like we was gonna make some good love. I'm just saying.
And we should also just clarify, there was no like fornicating either. We never did like touching each other's stuff.
I think fornicating actually means having sex. But yes, we didn't touch or do none of that.
Well,
there was no oral. It was literally
kissing,
just making out. It was literally just that. So, but it was like that. So I just think that us having that experience and then stopping and then going into marriage ready to have sex finally, legally, spiritually, we, at least for me, like I said, I had this expectation that it was going to be great.
You're just going to pick up right where I left off.
Because I felt like I had experienced you in a level of freedom in that area that it didn't fully come to fruition early on in our marriage. And we've kind of hinted at that before in the past. And one of the things I want to say, and this is why you got to be very careful what you listen to, what you watch before you get married, because I came in with unhealthy mindsets and perspectives of my own. Mm-hmm. Like there were things that when we got married that maybe I would say or maybe I would do that really were not godly, or even if they weren't godly, maybe it had nothing to do with was it godly or ungodly, but it just wasn't creating a safe environment for you. Like, I didn't really care about creating, if I'm being honest, I don't think I consciously I don't care about Pauline, but I think subconsciously I didn't really care about creating a safe environment for you to thrive sexually, because I just wanted to get mine, or I just wanted to do this and experience this. And I think you have to be very careful as a man and even a woman, but you have to be very careful that you're not coming into marriage with a selfish sexual mindset and just trying to worry about getting mine and wanting to please yourself, because ultimately it's now supposed to be a mutually serving space in your marriage. And if I'm coming into it selfishly, how can I expect her to trust that I'm there to make her feel good and feel safe? And that is ultimately not going to help us have a great relationship. Is that something that you would say you sensed, like that I was like being selfish, or like did you feel safe in our sex life?
I definitely didn't feel unsafe, like that you were going to hurt me, or
and I wasn't all bad.
Take advantage of me.
I had some moments, but it wasn't great.
But I think we had some pretty good conversations leading up. We didn't go into marriage with any surprises, so we knew each other's past and all that stuff, and muscle memory is definitely a thing where even if you haven't been doing it for years and years and years, your body is like, hello, like something's been awakened within me, and if you hear someone's past, and I obviously didn't know the details of things that you did and all of that, but you had told me your heart posture for when you were having sex in high school and in early college of this is you told me that you literally only wanted a girlfriend because you wanted to have sex, and it wasn't because you met this amazing girl and you just really wanted to be with her and treat her well.
Got me sounding crazy on the pod.
That's how you would. Am I wrong? I think
no, I'm not mad for sharing this. I just I I guess I did say that. I kind of
Yeah, you've told me that before. And
I wanted love.
You grew to love her and like, you know, whatever, all that stuff. But and it wasn't. Maybe this was before you even met her or got with her.
Yeah,
you told me in general.
Yeah, this was
like
young
in the locker room. This is what was talked about. People doing this, doing that.
Before,
and you were like, "Yeah, I want a girlfriend so I can have full access." Like basically have a side, you know, not a side, but like have a girl on call. Like, that's what you wanted. You wanted.
Yeah, I didn't say it like that. But I didn't say it like that. But yes, you know, before I was ever dating somebody, that was the heart. Yeah,
but then you got a girlfriend, so
yeah, because I wanted to live it out. But anyway,
right. But that's what I'm saying. So you sharing that with me and me understanding
that was BC
like,
though.
That's how, right, I know. But it was still you. It was part of you, and knowing that was your story and how you were raised by, you know, your teammates, your friends, whatever. I don't know. They were influenced. They influenced.
It definitely was a race to who could lose their virginity first.
Right. So that me knowing.
Well, what that got to do with we in the married night?
I was not shocked. Is what I'm saying.
Shocked about what?
Because I was not shocked about your approach, your disposition, whatever the word is, your attitude towards sex in the beginning of our marriage, the first couple of months. Because I knew you were excited. I knew you were, you know, that's where you had come from.
And if you don't want to, that's fine. But because I feel like it's starting to get vague. What was my disposition? Like somebody listening to this, like, are we in a court case?
Very
like, what
aggressive. Very aggressive. You were very aggressive. You know, we had conversations before of like, because I told you when we were engaged, like, oh, I feel pressure, like, you know, to have sex on our wedding night after having a long wedding and all these things. And you had said like, oh, you know, like at first you were a little bit nervous.
No pressure.
At first you were a little bit nervous. You were
I'll go to sleep right now.
Girl. No, first you were nervous, like, oh, like, come on. No, like, you didn't say come on.
Okay, come on, bro. Why did I say come on?
You didn't say come on, but I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was something, I could tell you were like, it wasn't as bad as when I told you I didn't want to kiss, but it was like close to that, like, okay, like, if that's what you need, like, that's fine. But then eventually you came back around before our wedding night, like probably a couple weeks before our actual wedding, and you were like, yeah, you know, we have the rest of our lives. I don't want to pressure you. Like, we don't have to, like, it's okay. We don't have to do anything that night if that's not what you want to do.
Did that make you feel safe?
It did. It did. I really, really appreciated that.
Take the pressure off, fellas, on that wedding night.
Yeah, but then when we actually did, I was like, oh yeah, he's very excited and very like.
So what would you say to a woman who is, you know, getting ready to get married, who may encounter a man who is not trying to be rude or make his wife feel unsafe, but is very excited? Like, is there anything that you can share? Is it just you just gotta figure it out, work through the process?
So I think what helped me was like me telling you. Like, basically saying the expectation's very low of, like, and, like, letting you kind of wrap your head around that. Of, like, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be ready. Let's just, like, kind of order food, get food that night, and, like, just, you know, it'll be our first night sleeping together, like, literally sleeping in the same bed together. Like, that's special. I heard once a girl who was a couple years older than me in college, and she had got married before me, had said, like, yeah, just take a shower together. Like, that's a very low-pressure way to, you know, get to know each other's bodies and stuff like that. And that was very good advice because, again, low pressure, but it's still intimate, obviously, and it's something new and fresh. And I think, like, most husbands would still be excited about that, you know, because it's a step further than where you were, you know, before.
Yeah, just gotta keep yourself under control in that shower.
Oh my gosh.
Nah, for real.
Yeah, nobody wants to be pounced on.
Yeah, and fellas, like, you're gonna be excited, especially if you did it God's way. Like, it just is what it is. But just relying on the Holy Spirit, like, Lord, I don't want to scare this woman.
Right. And we have the rest of our lives.
And there is no. Also, I don't want to put fear.
Yeah.
Into this, because the enemy probably would love to use this to, like, oh, you should be timid on your wedding. Like, no, we're not saying that. And, like, every woman
or a guy?
No, for a guy, for both. Like a guy being like, oh, I don't want to scare her, so I'm not gonna, like, be myself. Or a woman be like, oh, I don't want this man to attack me. And, like, y'all may not be us, right? And that's totally fine. Like, maybe the roles will be reversed, right? Maybe the woman will be ready to go, and the guy's more like, like, let's ease into this for whatever reason. So, you know, just listen and allow the Lord to lead you in your own life. But
yeah,
I think we're just saying the heart posture shouldn't be like, oh, I just want to pounce just to pounce. It should be, I want to be with my wife, but I want her to want to be in it just as comfortably as well.
But I think that's good. And just the main thing is just taking it one step at a time. So like if you both are like really excited about it, you have a license now. After your wedding is over and after your marriage license is signed, like you literally have a license to have sex. Now when you get your license, when you drive, I mean, does that mean you're driving cross country the first day? No. Sometimes, I mean, you had driving tests all that time, so that's probably not the best analogy, and you had, experiences driving and your driving hours and all that stuff. But I think it's like an opportunity of like, hey, we get to finally do this together, and I want it to go for a long time. Like I want us to be together. And like one thing that helped me was thinking like, okay, we have our wedding night. We stayed in a hotel after our wedding. Then the next day we left for the honeymoon. We had 5 days in the honeymoon. And then after the honeymoon, we get to go back to our home together, our first apartment together. And like, this is not a one and done. It's not a one night stand. Like we're literally going to be together every day for the rest of our lives. Like this is no rush.
And ask the Lord to renew your mind. Because some of y'all was out here in these streets and you're used to the one and done.
Yeah,
you're used to like,
having to quicken
I'm
things.
here because I'm here to get mine. And like, you don't want that mindset. That it's not going to help you to have the best married sex when you are married, because it's supposed to be unity. Everything in marriage is supposed to be unity and togetherness. So let's move this on. So obviously the wedding night, you feel like I scared you a little bit.
I wasn't scared, like, oh my gosh, I need to call somebody, but I was more like...
I know, it was just a lot.
My eyes were open. I was, like, kind of just observing and watching and seeing and, like, okay, this is, like... Because what I was about to say is this is a new area of trust that your relationship is building. Because if you did honor God with your bodies while you were dating, pretty much every area of your relationship up to this point has been explored, except sex. You guys have been over each other's places, most likely. You've talked about finances. Like, nothing else was really a surprise to you besides each other's bodies and experiencing each other's bodies in this way. So this is the only area that you're starting off with trust on level 0. Like, and if you have prior experiences outside of your partner, then you're coming in even with a negative mindset, which is what we're talking about. You're coming off like, hey, I have some work to do before I can be a clean slate mentally. Obviously, you're washed white as snow. You're clean in the eyes of the Lord spiritually. So you really do need to start off slow. Just think about your guys' first date. Like, you didn't come in hot your first day talking about, girl, I want to marry you and, I want to have your babies. Like, you have to really, you start off slow. Hi, what's your name? Like, you build the trust. And obviously, like, you're vibing off of each other. It just takes a lot of learning. Like, you guys are literally fish out of water.
Yeah. So I think you said something good about, like, building that trust. So, fellas, just be mindful of your words when you're in the moment. Not saying certain things that maybe you heard on songs or other places or that you just said in your own life. Like, we don't need anybody to beat anything up. Like, let's just But
yeah, I mean, that's really, really real. And like, you've shared on the podcast before about our first date and how you had a mentor that helped you plan our first date. Like, hey, make sure you give flowers, make sure you do this, make sure you do that, get her a gift. Like, a lot of guys and girls don't have that kind of guidance and vision when it comes to sex, of like, what is good sexual etiquette as a married person. Okay, I'm married now. You guys told me to wait till I'm married. What do I do? Like, we're not talking about like physical, technique and skills, but more about like, hey, make sure the room is clean. Like, it would be nice if you got her a gift or something like that. I know you had in our wedding night room, you had people bring like cupcakes and food and Martinelli's and stuff like that, just to like set the mood and romanticize. And like, these things probably aren't shocking to you guys because you have watched movies and stuff before where people set the scene, and like, you could take that, but like, this is where it's really helpful to have those like mentors or older sisters, older brothers, Titus 2 type relationships, because if you just walk in and then rip your pants off, like, that's not gonna go well.
And I think it's really good to say here, let's stop here, when you are the night you get married, hopefully you had some really good conversations with your partner and you know them, so you should know going into it, hey, this person may be a little more hesitant about this experience. Or you should know, hey, they've been telling me, get your popcorn ready. And both of y'all agree. So then, like, forget everything we saying and just do you. But our whole goal here is hopefully you recognize that you two should be on the same page about where each other is coming in. If one person is coming in at a 10, another person is coming in at a 5, how do we meet? If one person's coming in at a 6 and one person's coming in at a 2, how do we meet? If y'all both at a 10, go ahead and do what you do. But just make sure that you can walk in agreement. Now, let's move. So, we were married. What's so funny?
We keep, they're not going to taste you this to go.
So, we get married, honeymoon, things are going okay. Like, we definitely we're doing it. We're having a great time in marriage, just being able to do it. Have sex. I know I'm starting to get all Christian. Do it.
It's not a bad
Can't say it. Starting to have sex. So I think that over time, you come back from the honeymoon, you start getting into real life, bills, all that stuff. Then you start to settle in and be like, all right, like this. And again, everybody may not have this experience. It may just always be great, and that's awesome. But for some people, and for us, it was, all right, like there's times where like this may be great, but then there's a lot of times where this just not hitting like I thought it was. And again, for me, when me and Pauline were kissing those first 5-6 months of our dating relationship, I saw a side of her that I was expecting to return when we got married. It's just as far as being excited and aggressive about sexual situations, and I wasn't fully seeing that. And I think that's where, on my end, we started having a little bit of the challenges. And I don't know if you want to jump into the conversation here or if you want to share some other stuff first. So yeah, we ended up having a conversation one night, just pillow talk. I don't think it was.
It was like 2 or 3 years in, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a while into our marriage, and it definitely wasn't a planned conversation. But I just had an honest conversation, and I had to ask Pauline, like, do you actually care if our sex life gets better? I said something like that.
Yeah, like, it seems like you don't. You asked me, do you care about this? It seems like you don't care. Do you want it to get better? Because,
again, I'm not trying to paint the picture that we never had great moments. We definitely had some good moments, but it was not consistent. And it wasn't making sense to me on why it wasn't consistent. Because I'm like, if we can do it great one time, why can't it be great every time? Mm-hmm. And my question to her was, and again, you weren't the only person that had their issues, but I was like, are you willing to figure out what the missing link is? Like, is that important to you? Was really, I guess, what my heart was. And I feel like that question really stuck with you more than I ever thought it would.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And this is coming. Okay. Next week, I'm going to go, like, kind of have my own, like, girl talk video about this on my channel. So if you want to talk about or, like, tune into that, make sure you do. But I think that conversation was, yeah, it really hit me hard because we had a lot of little conversations up to that point. So I don't want to make it sound like Tim just one day exploded and I, like,
come on, girl!
Yeah, like, sideswiped me. I wasn't shocked. But it wasn't, when he brought that up. It was just more of, like, it was obviously a little bit more intense than normal when, like, me realizing how frustrated he was. Because for, up to 3 years until that point, he's very gracious, very, like, okay, I understand this is going to take time. And, your heart was more of, like, what can I do? Like, is this something that what can I do to make you more comfortable? And we had different conversations about trying different things and, like, setting the mood, all these different things. And, like, sometimes that would work, and then you would tell me, like, we're talking about candles and this and that and music and kind of the things that you guys would assume. And, you kind of told me, like, yeah, like, I'm happy to do those things, but, like, it can't happen every single time if we're going to be, like, having sex on a consistent basis. Like, I'm just being honest with you. Like, it's just not going to happen every single time. And even, I'm pretty sure you told me, like, there are times where that has happened and it still is not, like, working, essentially.
And that's the thing that's tough, is when you don't get that positive reinforcement. It's like your partner, and this could be outside of sex, it could be any area, like your partner tells you, hey, if you do this, I'll have this result, and then you don't get that, it's like, why did I waste my time?
Right.
And that's something you got to work out in your marriage.
And I know you're a type of person, I'm sure there's other guys and girls who are listening who are like, you don't like wasting your time. So I'm fine to do certain things if it's going to work, but I'm not going to do this extra stuff if it's not helping you and if it's not with actually fixing the problem. Like, let's actually fix the problem. So yeah, I mean, through a series of events that, you know, I kind of like, again, dove into more on my own video about like things that kind of got me to a better place. But that conversation really hit me because I realized how frustrating it was for you. And like, I realized, I think to that point, I kind of just thought it was going to get better on its own. And I realized like, okay, I can't be passive about this anymore. Like, I need to actively work towards this. And like, obviously being a relationship person and being an intentional relationship person and believing and being intentional about every aspect of a relationship, knowing how important sex is, knowing that sex is basically like, you know, a microcosm of your entire marriage. And if your sex life is not good on a consistent basis, like something else is going on. And it kind of like hit me in that moment, like, okay, like I cannot, it's not that the sex was the problem, it's the fact that I was like numbing myself and that I was like withdrawing, and that if anything had come across to you that like I didn't care, that was what my issue was. It wasn't that we were having, you know, frustration or like some difficulty. It was more of just like, he thinks that I don't care. Like, that's not good. I don't ever want him to feel alone or feel like there's a major area of our marriage that, you know, I don't care about. Like, that's not good.
Right. So, and I know you're going to share more on your own channel, which I think is great, but for the people here, what was there? Did you go to counseling?
Yes.
Did you pray? Like,
yes.
What helped you get over? Would you call it a mental block, or what was it?
Yeah, I definitely think I had a block. So yes, counseling helped a lot, and I saw a counselor for like unrelated reason, and then this like our sex life had kind of come up, and she had said some things that helped me realize like, okay, this is not a bad thing. What you're feeling, what you're experiencing, this is good. Like, this is what it's supposed to feel like. This is not something that you should be like kind of pushing out, because I was very tense. I was very like locked up, very like physically resistant when we were together. And I think that it was a lot of it, you know, if we're just being honest, there was pain involved because like this was new for me. And it was something that I think that I didn't really know how to like get past. But I think a lot of
get past what?
The pain and like
pain of physically.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think a lot of it was mental. So like, obviously, if somebody like punches you in the arm and you tense up, like bracing yourself for the punch, that's gonna feel different than if you're relaxed and somebody comes up and punches you in the arm. So like, because there's a muscle, you know, vaginas are muscles, so like you learn how to relax that. And obviously I've learned this too, having 2 children now and having 1 C-section, 1 vaginal birth, and learning the difference between those 2 as well, and pushing a baby out unmedicated, mind you. So like just learning like your body, and like that's a whole other separate, you know, kind of conversation of like women knowing their bodies, knowing how they work and all of that, and that not being talked about enough, like in church culture, black culture, whatever. I'm like feeling like, oh, if you teach people what things are, they're gonna know how to use it, and like, you know, whatever. So that was a big part of it too. But yes, counseling, with that conversation that I have with my counselor was huge, of her just.
So what was there something that outside of like, yes, you should feel these feelings, was she saying that you should feel the feelings of not being happy that your sex life isn't great? Well, that's the part I was a little confused about. You were saying. So
I'm trying to not share everything that she shared, but
sorry if I'm getting too.
No, it's okay. But yeah, it was more of like being present in the moment and knowing that it's okay to relax and like kind of. Why are you laughing?
Can you share my favorite word that she introduced, or because maybe that'll help somebody to
go ahead. You know, want to say it so bad.
Do I? You know, married people be watching this sometimes, which we appreciate you. So this may actually help somebody who can apply this right now.
Okay.
Why you? She didn't tell me.
You know, you're the one who wants to do yourself.
We did have the same therapist, and I'm sad. She retired a couple years ago. We miss you, girl.
I don't think she's watching.
I know. Hey,
she's probably on an island somewhere.
Woo! All right. So the whole phrase that she introduced to you.
Did you write it down?
No, I didn't write it down. That was helpful. I just feel like it was helpful because having language in your marriage can help you talk. Safe language can help you talk about things that, for whatever reason, may be uncomfortable. So it doesn't even have to be about sex. It could be about any area of your life. If you can find a safe word that you guys can use to talk about it, that could help. But I know for you, she told you that you should. Why are you laughing?
Because I'm looking at you trying not to laugh.
She said that you should just experience your husband's manhood. Is that the word she used?
Which word?
Manhood.
Why am I laughing?
Yeah,
like
what grade are we in?
You guys, this is so vulnerable. Oh my gosh. I hope this helps somebody. Lord be glorified.
Why is manhood so like?
I know,
like I said,
not.
Right? You're like I said something crazy. All right, try to move on. So anyway, that saying really helped us.
Oh, okay.
Well, just me being able to say stuff and like, you know, that's something safe that your therapist gave you to be able to communicate things. So all that to say, I think, long story short, her telling you to enjoy it was really all that you needed. Was it that permission?
Yeah, and maybe it's because like I looked at her very much as an authority. She was much older than me, like a grandma, you know, and she was somebody that I had built trust with over years. And like I guess I've never had like an in-depth, and she's a Christian, like conversation about sex with somebody that I respected and that was older and that obviously had been married before. So maybe that is what I needed. I mean, I also went through kind of my own like transformation with my confidence during this time. Over the years, I was feeling really terrible about my body and just about myself after our oldest son's birth, because that birth was very traumatic for me. And just, yeah, again, obviously birth is very, very strongly connected to your body as a woman. And I remember like the first time we had sex after our oldest son's birth, like I cried. I was, and it wasn't because like anything happened between us. I just was in my head so much thinking about like what should have happened, and like kind of feel like my body had failed me, and just doing something, you know, sexual again around this, the same organ that's supposed to birth my son, you know, is now kind of being activated again. And that was very emotional for me. Yeah.
And as the partner who may not be having any struggles mentally, I think it's really important when you see your spouse going through this to be there for them and be patient for them and not rush them and be like, I can't believe you still dealing with this. Like, yeah, bruh, this is what we should be doing. And whenever you do that, you're just stealing trust, taking away trust, instead of building trust. When you're there and you're patient, you know, the Bible talks about one of the fruits of the Spirit is long suffering. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that this has to be an area that you have to long suffer in, but if it is, do it well. Like if it's an area where you have to show patience and show grace to your partner, it's worth it, because eventually they can get better and get to the place where they can find freedom the same way that we were able to. And I just think it's really important to hear that piece of like, yo, don't make it worse. Yeah. Like whatever issues you think they have, you can certainly make them worse. Yeah. Or you can choose to make them better. And again, that's in any area of marriage. You can either amplify the situation and make it worse, or you can amplify it and make it better. And I think being patient with them, loving on them, saying, hey, I'm here for you. What can I do to serve you? Like all of those things help. Right. And just being patient and praying for them, even like silently, and saying like, you know, not putting pressure on, because like, and this is why it's important that you do wait while you are dating, and take your time when you're newlyweds, because this is going to be something that you guys are dealing with for the rest of your lives, as far as like sex being good, sex being hard, you know, having times of life where you can't have sex or it's not that good or whatever the case is. Like you really have to train your body, kill your flesh, because if you are just solely focused on wetting your whistle, getting what you need, whatever it is, you know, that's when people start, like, that can drive people to adultery, which is obviously detrimental if your only focus is like being selfish and getting what you need. But if you're patient with your spouse, like you said, that builds trust, and that'll make the sex even better when it is time, and realizing like, you know, you're responsible for taking care of this person, and it's just such an opportunity to love on them and to be patient. Yeah. So long story short, that conversation with Pauline's therapist really started opening things up for us. I'm not going to say the next time we were able to be with each other that it was great at that point, but eventually the Lord kept softening hearts, kept renewing minds, and we got to a place where we were starting to consistently be able to have sex in a way that was enjoyable for both of us, I would say. And now it's pretty much very consistent in that way. And our whole goal with this podcast was to encourage you. Whether you're married and you're watching this and your sex life is not where you want it to be, there is hope.
Yeah.
Keep praying, keep believing, keep doing the work to get freedom in your mind and your heart. Ask the Lord to cleanse your thoughts of any past experiences that you may have that may be trying to come into your bedroom now and haunt you. And if you're not married yet and you're watching this, know that it's okay to have pleasure in sex. We're giving you permission now, before you even step into it, to know that the Lord wants you to experience pleasure in this area because, hey, He created it. Right. Like, this is not something that He doesn't know happens in a marriage. This is something He used in order to not only help procreate and reproduce in the earth, but so that we can have enjoyment too. Because think about it. God didn't have to make sex pleasurable. He didn't have to make sex necessary in order to make humans. Yeah, He could have done anything else that He wanted to do, but He chose to allow us to have this pleasurable experiences, which is such an amazing thing that our God would do. So ask the Lord to change your mind around what His views are when it comes to help you see what His views are. His mind isn't changing on that, but say, Lord, what are your views when it comes to sex? Help me see it the way you do. And when you do that, then you'll be able to step into it and enjoy, if you're a woman, your husband's manhood, and if you're a man, enjoy, you know what I mean? So,
yeah, and even if you are somebody who's watching this, if you're very, like, nervous, maybe if you love God, but you've been having a hard time abstaining from sex because you just are not aware of any married couples that are Christian that have had or are having good sex.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Anything is possible.
Let this be a light for you and encouragement for you. And I think hopefully with us being as transparent and vulnerable as we have been, like, you, even if your sex life isn't great when you start getting married, when you get married, which honestly it like shouldn't be the best. Like, you don't want your sex life to peak the first year of your marriage. You're supposed to be married for
we hope it keep getting better for us. As happy as we are, we hope it just keep getting better.
Some people talk about that, like, as you get older, like, you know each other better, like, you know each other's bodies better and all that stuff.
What? I'm just listening, girl. How much longer we got on this podcast?
Oh my god.
Got some things I need to do.
Oh Lord.
I'm just asking a question.
But yeah, if that's you and like you're always been curious about, like, oh, Christians always say wait, but what happens after you wait? What if it's, I know people who waited and it was terrible. And like, you have to remember, sex is not a performance. Sex is not something, it's like, all right, we're at the wedding night, here, get on stage, like, do your thing. I waited, I paid a ticket, you know, my ticket being 2 years of dating you to get here, like, this needs to be great. Like, this is a journey. It is the beginning. You guys are infants. Like, your marriage is young, and it's not going to be, I mean, our marriage is young too. We're barely 7 years old. 7. Yeah, like, our marriage is, you have to think about your marriage and as a person. Like, if your marriage is 4 or 5 days old, you wouldn't expect a 4 or 5 day old baby to drive a car. Like, it's just
to
not
do anything.
Yeah, all they actually take from you. So just be super gracious to each other in this area, and it needs to be something that you're excited to explore and discover and serve and talk and fail and learn and grow and all that stuff.
Yeah. So we hope this was helpful. We love y'all. Let us know in the comments what you took from it, if it was helpful. Let us know what else, other topics. If there's other topics that you feel like are taboo in the church and not being talked about that we can address, let us know in the comments. And subscribe to the channel. We'll see y'all next week.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this video.
To get more Christian relationship advice, subscribe to our channel.
And make sure you check out our other videos as well.